Welcome to Good Grief, the podcast where resilience meets reality. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Malone. In this podcast, we delve deep into the stories of individuals who've triumphed over tragedy, adversity, and trauma. In every episode, we bring you raw and honest narratives from guests who faced life's most challenging moments head on. Through candid conversations, they share their journeys of resilience, shedding light on the strategies, mindset shifts, and support systems that empowered them to rise above their darkest hours. Join us as we explore the profound depths of human resilience and discover how, even in the face of life's toughest trials, there can be light, growth, and yes, good grief. Okay, listeners, thank you so much for joining me for this episode today. My guest is Adriene Caldwell. She is the author of Unbroken, Life Outside the Lines. She's lived a remarkable life, including incredible grief and loss. So, Adriene, thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege to be on your show.
Thank you. So tell us a bit about yourself. So kind of where we'll get to the book, but kind of tell us where that came from. Why are you doing what you do?
Okay. So I became a ward of the state when I was 12 years old. My mother relinquished rights. And at 18, I aged out of the system. And about 2 years later, I asked for my CPS case files, and I got this giant box that was filled with 2 stacks of papers. Every report, every evaluation, everything that had ever been done on me, that's what I was given. So, and it took me 25 years. I would go and I would start to look at it, and I would have to put it away. I just was not emotionally ready to do it. And about 4 years ago, I got it out and I started going through it. And one of the things that I went through was horrifically abusive foster care. Um, I'll put it this way, my schizophrenic, physically abusive mother, I've never had a nightmare about her. The woman who was my foster parent, I've had nightmares about her where I wake up crying as recently as a year ago. So, when I was going through my documents, I wanted some sort of recourse. I wanted some action to take place. I wanted her to be held accountable. And I reached out to lawyers, I reached out to the state. Another thing was I wanted to make sure that she didn't have access to any more girls, that she was no longer traumatizing and abusing these girls, because what she did to us was absolutely abuse, emotional abuse. And when I realized that I wasn't going to get any sort of legal recourse or resolution, that's when I started writing my book. And my book covers my life from early childhood to about early 20s, and in it, I have either been the witness to or the victim of the sexual assault of a young girl, the drowning death of a child, emotional and physical abuse, extreme poverty, mental illness, homelessness, the abuse of foster care, bulimia, drug and alcohol addiction, pedophilia, death, suicide, and incest. So I've had a fair run of traumas in my life that I've encountered, and I've definitely made progress. Writing the book was hell. It was absolute hell. My coping strategy for the past 30 years has been to take the trauma and put it in a metaphorical box and put that box on a metaphorical shelf and shut the door. And I did that with each thing. So I was repressing all of my emotions. And writing this book, going through each of those things, those traumas that I listed, actually forced me to confront them. So it's taken me 4 years to write this book. But and like I said, it really has been hell. I don't recommend it unless you are absolutely certain that you're emotionally ready to go through it. Um, I would probably say that I wasn't, but I made it. I did it. The book's complete. Um, but yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah. I mean, I've shared with you before we started recording that I wrote my own autobiography, and I had the same experiences, things that I thought don't bother me anymore, I guess is the term I'm gonna use, that brought up a lot when I wrote about them, and the memories, sometimes some of the people in my family that I talked to kinda get a better sense of certain things. I was like, "Oh, wow," and then the anger, right? As far as
Mhm.
why didn't this person, why didn't that person kind of thing, those all yeah, those all came up, and so I agree with you. It's one of those things where I think, and I think I was working on mine for well over 10 years before I finally got to it, and I
Wow.
really only finished publishing it because I had a cancer scare and I wanted to have my kids have my story. So other than that, I wouldn't have done it 'cause it would have been like, I just yeah, going through that was really brutal, but I hear you. However, in your case with this book, I mean, it's gonna help a lot of people really understand, ho not only how someone becomes a healthy, if you will, person at the end of all this trauma, but also, maybe how they deal with someone who's in the midst of this or has gone through such a childhood.
Right. And that's my goal for the book. Ultimately, I will consider it a success if I change one person's life in a profound, true sense. If I make a lasting impact.
Yeah.
That's my barometer for success with this.
Yeah.
So just one person.
Yes.
So
And that's probably not a lofty goal. I'm sure you're gonna have a lot more than that, but, you also made the comment about looking for, retribution or responsibility from your mom for her actions, and I think that's also, that's a hard one to get let go, right? Where it's kinda like, I'm not gonna be able to do that, so, in my case, there's things where I'd like someone to apologize, and just
yeah.
a quick apology, and I've had people tell me, "You're never gonna get it," so you have to kinda figure out how to release that without getting that apology that you very well deserve, but, um
The foster mother, the emotionally abusive foster mother, I lived with her for 3 years, and I out of everything that's happened, that entire list that I went through, she is the only person I have been unable to forgive, and I wish I could, because it would lighten my heart, it would lighten my soul, if I could forgive her. But I'm still not there. I don't understand how she could do what she did.
Yep. Yep.
So,
No, I, 100% understand that. In my case, the providers that caused my son's injury that eventually caused his death, I wanted an apology, didn't get the apology, and it took me, let's say 20 years after he passed away before I finally was able to say, "I gotta let this go." Forgiveness isn't about acceptance and saying, "I'm okay with what you did." It's me saying, "I no longer have you in my head, and I'm happy to have you gone.
right.
On your plate now," and kind of leaving it at that. So that was I get what you're saying. You're a lot younger than I am, so hopefully you'll get there someday because you don't want her in your head too much, but I get that. Some people are harder to forgive than others because of what they did.
Yeah, she was malevolent. Eh, I would even go so far as to say evil.
Oh,
I genuinely believe that people are good and that most people make the best decisions they can at the time with the information that they have. That's my view on humanity.
yeah.
Um, and I just I can't get there yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. I know, when my mother's passed away, but when she was still alive, I remember asking her one time, "How, as a mom, could you let your daughters be exposed to such horrible things?" And I just genuinely wanted to know what you're saying. How and why, and help me understand because I just can't wrap my mind and I wasn't even a parent yet at that time, little
Right.
and she said to me, "I did the best I could with what I had to work with at the time," and I really was super offended by that because I thought, yes, I get it. I get what you just said, but there's never an excuse for some of the more horrible things. You can find other ways to get around that, right?
Right. My
Whatever.
grandfather did something similar to my mother, and my grandmother did nothing about it.
Yep.
And I adored my grandmother. She took care of me. My mother, as I mentioned, was schizophrenic. She was going down the crazy train, and my grandmother protected me, shielded me. She was my guardian. She intervened when my mom would do crazy things with me. And, I never understood why she stayed with her husband. And she had been adopted into a fairly wealthy family, like, I believe that they would have helped her,
Right.
but, um, yeah, the only thing that happened was my mother was abused, but her sister, so there were 4 children, 4 siblings, um, the 2 boys protected the younger sister, and what I've thought is that maybe my mother allowed it to happen to her as a way of protecting her little sister.
Yeah. That's that's a narrative I've heard before. So yes, I get that. I mean, people don't realize in dysfunctional families what that really looks like, right?
Mhm.
But there's different levels of how we try to protect ourselves and our siblings or whatever it might be in those situations. So yeah, that's a hard one to deal with. So having had those traumatic dysfunctional experiences as a child, I mean, um, I'm sure there's things that you miss that you would have had as a child if you hadn't had all that going on, but, a lot of what we experience is what causes us to be who we are today. So, how
Absolutely.
do you feel like those negative experiences have impacted you in a positive way or, that have you been able to help other people or whatever? How has that gone for you?
Yes, I would not be the person I am today had I not gone through those experiences, and those experiences have allowed me to be incredibly sympathetic, empathetic, and understanding of other people. So, I always say that I would never change a single thing that has happened to me, and I've had some pretty crappy deals happen, but, it made me stronger, it made me resilient, and I got through it, and I'm better off for it, so, as I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, true. I actually wrote that in my book that I frequently tell people that I wouldn't change things because I like who I am. There are times when I wish we could change things, but we can't.
Right,
So, like,
right.
road that you don't wanna go down because it just takes you nowhere, so that part happens. So, for your I know your book, you said it's pre-order. The audio and ebook are gonna come out before the print book comes out. Who's your audience, and who's gonna benefit, really find these nuggets in your book? What's your thought on that?
Sure. My book is for survivors, whether they have struggled in the past or those people who are still struggling present day. I would like to be that beacon of hope saying, you can make it, you can get through it. Just take one step, followed by another and another, and eventually you're going to be out of the situation that you're currently in. So I really want to be a source of hope and inspiration.
Right, right. So the book isn't just, written story about this. It actually relates to who you are today and the wonderful things that you can do and so on and so forth. So people get from that it's not just this horrible story. There's good stuff in there.
Right, there is. I do wanna be very clear. It's not a how-to guide. I don't have the solution for how to get through trauma or, I don't have some magic seven-step program that you do this and you're gonna be A-okay. No, it's not like that. But, um, it does show all of my traumas, all of my experiences. And my hope is that if somebody sees it, reads it, and says, if she can survive that, I can survive this.
Yeah. Yeah. I also find a lot of times people will be drawn to such a book if they know someone who's been through so like maybe I'm dating someone who I found out had this horrible childhood and I just can't quite get it. So to read about the experiences of someone else who had that helps me understand, oh, that's why she does this or why that happens or why this is a trigger or something. So would you think that would be helpful as well?
I hadn't even thought of that, to be honest, but yes, absolutely. And my husband falls in that category. He's normal. I have never in my life met anyone who hasn't had trauma, true trauma, in one way or another. I find that most people have endured something, and he hasn't. Like, it's not like his childhood was perfect and bed of roses, but he hasn't had any traumas, and he tries to relate to me as best he can, but it's kinda one of those things, unless you've been in the trenches with the others, you really don't know.
Yes. Yeah,
No.
true. I know with my husband, we've been together for what, 6 years now. Well, we've been married for 6 years. We've been together about 12 years. He did not have that kind of trauma growing up either, and so it was really for years, I didn't share a lot of things with him because every now and again, something would come out, and the look on his face was
Mhm.
and I'd think, "Okay, I don't yeah, whatever." And I don't like pity, so it'd be like, I don't wanna see that face, whatever, but, every now and again, something would come up. I know also for me, like Mother's Day, I don't really do much to think about my mother on Mother's Day, and people who love their mothers have often said, "Wow, how can you" I'm like, I had less of a connection to my mother than I do to the grocery clerk. So that's kind of how I would with the grocery clerk passed away, how much would I grieve that? So grieving has to do with, how important the thing was that we lost. So I think people kind of have a hard time with that, and I'm guessing this is probably the same with you, where people just like, "I don't understand why you don't do this or why you don't think that," or whatever it may be. And knowing that bad things can happen to such young people, I mean, that's another one that I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, wow, I don't understand that." It's like, it happens, but I still can be, you know, a functional person. It doesn't mean I, have to stop, whatever, put me in a home or whatever. I mean, thankfully.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you think it's an attachment thing with your mother, or is it just your experiences, the
'Cause she was my mother was, and for anybody listening who's read my autobiography, you've heard this story, but she was someone who should not have been a mother. She should not have had children, and she said many times over the years that she wished she didn't have children. So,
Oh god.
like, she told me at one point in time that if abortion was legal in 1964, I wouldn't be here. So that, and she exposed my sister and I to some really ugly, ugly, ugly people, and it was one of those things where especially when I became a mother myself, where I realized
Mhm.
that is not the mother I wanna be. I'm gonna break that cycle so that my children have no idea what that's like. They don't and they
Absolutely.
so proud that my children do not have any idea what that's like. They don't know what it's like to fear the adults in the house. They've never had CPS come over, they've never had the police come, all those things that you
Right.
try to brag it. I'm just saying that is something I'm very proud. They've never seen any
Absolutely. You should be proud. You broke the cycle.
never seen somebody so drunk that they're, whatever. It's like, I no. So it's kind of like, I get
Mm.
that. It's like, I get that. It means a lot to me to have that. And, the next generation isn't going to take that generational trauma that we hear about all the time.
Mm.
Like your case, mom is abused, and now, she as, that kind of thing. That's so, unfortunately, so very common.
Right. So when I had my daughter, I didn't immediately bond with her. I wasn't immediately attached. I was very overwhelmed, and I was telling my husband, just take her. His parents were over. Just take her. You guys raise her. I can't do it. I can't handle this. I can't take this on. I'm not going to be able to do it. And she was born August 7th, and on the morning of November 8th, I woke up hungover. I was sleeping on the bathroom floor mat, and that was the day that I decided that I was going to be her mother and that I was going to give her the childhood that I didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's had a few whammies, severe ADHD. Her father passed when she was 10 years old. So she hasn't had the perfect, idyllic childhood that I wanted for her, but she's had nothing close to what I went through, and I'm proud just as you should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that speaking for myself, because I didn't have a close relationship and quite honestly, touch was not a good thing when I was growing up. So you didn't want to be close to people. So for me, when I became a mother, it does not come naturally to me. And my oldest two are in their 30s. It didn't come naturally to me to want to hug them, right? To hold,
Mhm,
because touch is not a good thing. So I to this day, I think to myself, I am gonna hug that child before they leave, and so I people think I'm, all that lovey-touchy with the kids. I have to think about it. It doesn't come naturally to me because that's how my brain is wired. So I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, you do this." Yeah, but you have to make that decision to
mhm.
change that, to break those bonds and say, "Nope, not gonna happen." I mean, my grandkids climb right into my lap. I'm all about, whatever, whatever. So it's kind of like, but it's all good. But I know in my brain that that's a part of me that it just doesn't come naturally to me. So I have to think about it.
Understand. My daughter, because of her ADHD, she fidgets, and my OCD does not fit well with her ADHD fidgeting. Like, I can't sit next to her because she moves constantly, and I'm like, "Oh my god." So I don't sit directly next to her. I'm like, "You go over there." Uh, but we, um we are more of a physical family. I make sure to hug her and tell her I love her. In fact, one I'll share a brief story. So, I had to brush her hair while she brushed her teeth, and I had to physically put her pajamas on her when she was 10 years old. I was still doing this, and I would walk her to the bed. Because if I just told her to go brush your teeth and hair and get ready for bed, it would be 2 hours later, and she was doing God knows what. So I had to physically place her in bed and, kiss her goodnight and say, "I love you." And I would make her dad come in the room because I couldn't let her leave the bed. If she left the bed, we were yeah, we were gonna start the whole cycle over again. So I made her dad, whenever he was home, come and say goodnight, give her a kiss and say goodnight. And those were the last words that he said to her before he passed the next day.
Yeah.
So
So she
I,
had, yeah. Oh,
uh,
that's powerful.
um, but it was a rule. We always said good night and we kissed her in bed. So I was so grateful for that and for those being his last words to her. My last words were, "Put your glasses on the table, you're gonna crush them." So
Oh, at least it wasn't negative. I mean, I don't I because of my losses in life, I tend to think about that. If this is the last conversation I had with this person, would I be happy that we walked away on this note? So I tend to think of that, I think, more than many people do for that very reason. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from. But again, at least it wasn't an argument or something.
yeah, no. We had stayed up he had gout, he had severe gout, and he was having a massive flare, and he had already called work and said he wasn't gonna make it in, so we were up at 1 AM binge watching Netflix and yeah, um, and the next morning, he just didn't wake up.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Mm.
sorry for your daughter to have to deal with that too. So, one thing I do wanna ask you about is, do you feel like in the writing of the book, I know it was difficult to write it, but do you feel like the writing of it and the finishing of it has helped you in along this journey of, kind of redefining who you are and figuring out what you wanna do with yourself and just, I don't know, forgiveness comes into mind for me, but just kind of like acceptance, I guess is the word I'm gonna use, is kind of accepting that I can't change that, but I can hopefully with this book help other people or something? Does that kind of strike a chord with you?
Yes. Absolutely. Um, I have faced issues that I have repressed for 30 years, and, um, I'm I'm proud of myself for doing so because, like I said, it was god awful, incredibly painful. Um, but I did it, and I did it probably as much for myself as for the readers, the potential readers, because it was my story and I wanted the opportunity to tell my side, to tell my story, to tell what happened to me. And my book gives me a voice that I don't feel like I had before.
Right, right. I'm curious, do you have any family who may have been part of this that are still alive today?
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
has have any of them had any contact with you to discuss, what are you writing or why'd you say that about me or anything like that?
Well, so my aunt basically raised me. She married my mother's brother, so she's my aunt by marriage. But my mother and I lived with her periodically, lived with them periodically. And I say that God didn't give me a mother and a father. He gave me two mothers. Because when my mother went away when I was 12 years old, my aunt stayed in my life, even through foster care. She would come and get me on every other weekend, and, um, so they've been very eager to get the book. I just sent it to them. So my aunt, my sister-in-law, and my cousin, and she's more than a cousin. She's like my sister. The three of them have been very interested in wanting to read it. And I told my aunt, I said, there are gonna be some parts that you're not gonna like, because there are parts where I say somebody should have intervened. You guys knew that my mother was not well and nobody came and checked on me. And I've discussed it with her. There are gonna be some parts that are difficult, but she also has been one of my greatest advocates. I mean, when I was in my early 20s, she took me to at least 10 psychiatrist appointments just trying to find a depression med that worked. I mean, at the age of 13, I had a psychological evaluation done. I actually include it at the end of the book. Um, and dysthymia, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I already had that by the time I was 13, so major depressive disorder was just on the way. I just wasn't there yet. So, now I did to get the background and to get history on my family, because my family does not talk about the past. They don't talk about the abuse that my mother suffered or, the physical abuse that my grandmother and my grandfather, laid on them. But what I did was I asked my uncle, he's out of the 4 siblings, he's the only remaining sibling, and I asked him if he would do an interview with me. And it's actually on my website under documents. I have the entire transcript. But, and this is in the book, he said that if he were to ever see his father again, he would kill the mother effer.
Yeah.
And he is absolutely serious. It now, my grandfather is deceased, but had he ever seen him, he would have killed him. So, and my uncle has asked me, he said, "I know you're writing your book, just keep it out of my house." So,
Yeah. So, and I'll share with you, because my book has been out now for 2 years. Um, the most of the people that were the bad people, I guess is the word I'm gonna use, are no longer living. Uh, what I have is my sister who was with me through childhood that I did talk to before I finished the book to just kinda get some ideas. What do you really think? Did this happen the way I wrote this or remembering incorrectly. But I have my uncle, my mother's brother, who was not happy with my book because it portrayed my mother in a real light as well as his father, my grandfather. So um, I get it. And I've also had family members that have read it that have reached out and said, if I would have known, I would have gotten involved, or, I wish you'd said something. I'm thinking, I was, how old was I? And I'm supposed to tell my great aunt or this cousin I see once a year, you know,
Right.
putting a lot on the kid to say that as far as I'm concerned. It's like,
Right. It
how
wasn't your job to make them aware, it was their job to be aware of you.
yeah, I mean, and I know in my case, as an adult, when I see children who exhibit things that I can see are likely due to some kind of abuse, I'm more hypersensitive to it. So it's kind of like,
Mhm.
why is that child, sitting quietly in the chair when any other 4-year-old would be playing with those toys? I'm just curious. Have they been threatened? Has there, what's happening? And so my brain kind of works that way differently too. So I think in some cases I'll give family members a bit of a pass, and that maybe if you didn't realize that these were things you didn't physically with your own eyes see some of these things happen, um, maybe you didn't. But on the other hand, yeah, I also had somebody send me a card one time that said something about, be the person that you wish had saved you as a child or something. I forget how it phrased like that, but I was thinking to myself, that would be kind of cool. Yeah, I'd like to be the person who can, save somebody from going through the terrible thing. So I completely get that. So, but yeah, I asked that question because again, I didn't have much in the way of negative feedback when my book came out, and I was worried about it because again, some of these characters are still around, and
Right.
I was honest. I didn't.
Did you use real names?
I did. I use real first names.
Oh, okay.
I didn't use last names. Matter of fact, a lot of people I referred to as simply as grandfather, uncle, you know, but, because again, when I wrote it, it was for my kids to understand. I wasn't really looking to point someone out, and I've actually had other people I've talked to on this show who've published autobiographies who've said that they specifically changed the names because some of these people were still around and they wanted to, protect their privacy or whatever. And I get it. I 100% get it, but I also think
Right.
it's your story and it's yours to tell, and it's not someone else's place to tell me what I have to edit out because it makes someone else uncomfortable. I
Right, right. So my daughter actually has discussed with me the fact that she does not want to read the book, and I am perfectly fine with that. Um, she, a- as I mentioned, she's had a childhood. It hasn't been perfect. She's 20 years old now. She's in college. But she said, "Mom, I just don't want the emotional burden. I don't want the knowledge of what you went through." And I completely respect her decision. So she will, even though, and it's my legacy. I've already discussed with my husband that if I pass, when I pass, the rights to the book go to my daughter. And it's up to her if she wants to keep it published or not.
You know,
But
she may as she gets older. I mean, 20 is insanely young, by the way, so young.
sure.
20. She may as she get older to decide that she wants to read. I don't of my 4 children, I know that one has read the book, and only because she helped me edit it. Um,
Mm,
my husband has not read my book. So, having had a very different childhood, I think he worries that, if he reads some of these things, it's gonna impact, I don't know, some way it feels about me or looks at me or something. I really don't know, and nor do I mean, it's okay, you don't have to read the book. Don't read it if you don't feel like you can
right.
away from it, but, it's just honest, and a lot of people don't wanna talk about ugliness, right? They don't wanna talk about
Right.
happening, and so, and I think maybe for kids, like, mine, your daughter, whatever, maybe they're just, "I don't wanna know that that happened to my mom because that just will break my heart to know that that happened to my mom," and I get it.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
so yes. Well, like I said, we are definitely going to link to all of these things when we publish the podcast. But is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish today?
No, I've had a wonderful time being on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you very much for having me.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for sharing what you've shared. As I have said before we started recording too, it's difficult to share personal stuff, right? I can write fiction every day of the week and or manuals, but when it comes to writing the personal stuff about whatever, especially when it makes me feel vulnerable and
Yes.
That's hard. So I respect that. I know you also told me that you are doing the narration for the audio version. I 100% respect that because I couldn't do it for my own, but I think that's amazing, and I'm very proud for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Good Grief. We hope that stories shared today have inspired and empowered you on your own journey of resilience. If you want to dive deeper into the themes of trauma, tragedy, and survival, be sure to check out my memoir, The Day I Became the Spider Killer, a memoir of trauma, tragedy, and survival. In this book, I shared my own raw and honest experiences, offering insights and strategies for overcoming life's toughest challenges. You can purchase the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or listen to it on Audible. Your support helps us continue to bring these powerful stories to light and spread a message of hope and resilience. Stay tuned for more incredible stories on our next episode. Until then, remember, even in the face of life's toughest trials, there can be light, growth, and good grief.